So some benefits of using visual supports, basically, when students see it, they tend to understand it clearer. And so we're going to take the visual tools test. Ask yourself these questions. Do you have a calendar to help you organize information? Someone tell me one time that they didn't keep a calendar, and I was like, how do you know when you have to do things if you don't keep a calendar? Typically, we all keep a calendar, okay? So that's just a way to organize information visually. And what about lists? Do you make lists whenever you go to the grocery store? Some people make lists, some people don't. That's another way to organize visually. When going to a restaurant, do you like to look at the pictures in the menu to decide what you want to eat? I know I do. I like to see what the food is going to look like before I order it. That's another way to organize through visual means. When you buy something and it's time to put it together, how many of you actually look at the pictures before you read the words? I look at the pictures mainly to put it together. I typically never read the words. Sometimes that's good and sometimes it's bad. Typically all of us use visuals to organize information. So it says here, if yes, click here. And so verifies that you use visuals to help you organize your life, make choices, and accomplish tasks. So we all use visuals. The reason to use visuals is to decrease anxiety. I know if you have worked with students, sometimes you'll see it in their face or their body language that they're starting to have a meltdown. And a lot of times talking to them kind of increases that anxiety as opposed to maybe showing them a picture or walking them through a visual or a social story. That might help them, calm down more so than just talking to them or interacting with them while they're having a meltdown. Another reason is to increase the calmness in the room and to teach how to accept change. It also helps increase flexibility for students when you use visuals with them. And of course, what we're all trying to do is create independence for students. So as opposed to always needing you there by their side, telling them what to do every second, using visuals allows them to be a little bit more independent from you. Who do you need to use visuals with? Well, this little slideshow is going to go across a bunch of different populations, but basically just about every child that has an IEP can benefit from using visuals, and even some students who don't have IEPs can benefit from using visuals. So why do they function better? Some students have attention problems, some shift attention quickly, some kids hear most of the background noise and none of the noise that they are needing to listen to. This is a video. You can go to YouTube to watch this video. It actually won't play on the website, but if you just click on YouTube here, it'll take you out to this video. Basically, this video is an example of what it would feel like to have autism, and it's all about sensory overload. So if you want to look at this later, I'm not going to show it during our session. Basically, it walks you through what sensory overload is and what it would feel like if you had sensory overload. It's a pretty interesting experience and kind of makes you feel a little uneasy when you listen to all the noises and the way students could possibly hear stimuli. Okay, so now we're going to look at a couple of tools. This website has printables on it, and you can print out any of these and reproduce any of these printables that you find on here. You don't have to ask permission or anything, it's just out there. So we'll look at the environment, like how to make visuals for the environment first. So what are tools that you can use for environment organization? So when you're using visuals for the environment, it helps the child have boundaries, creates order, structures the environment with and makes it more predictable, and of course it helps with independence. It helps the child become a little bit more responsible. Some examples of tools for the environment are like labeling school supplies, putting little footprints by the locker where the child would need to stand, putting a square or some boundaries on the area where the child is sitting for lunch or on a bench for recess or waiting for the bus, basically like mapping out the area that's that child's space so that other kids don't come in that space or know where the line is drawn, okay? So let's look at some make and takes for the environment. Okay, so some examples of tools, visual tools for the environment are something like putting the child's photograph on their cubbyhole or locker so that the child knows that this is their space, and then also placing the feet where the child would stand so that they know that this is where I go to get my materials or get my things. And if you click on this link right here of the locker, it'll download the paper feet to indicate where to stand. So it's just a Word document with some feet that you could print out and like tape to the ground. This one right here at the bottom here is just a template for students' photos. When I was in the classroom, I liked my students' photos all to be, let me just show you what that looks like, all to be the same dimension so that it looks uniform as opposed to just having a bunch of random shaped pictures everywhere. So this is just a photo template. So you could put the student's name and then put like their photo here, and then all the kids' photos would have the same shape. Masking tape to indicate where to line up, which is a simple thing. A lot of AP teachers and physical ed teachers already do a lot of this taping on the ground to tell kids where they need to go. So you could like incorporate that in your classroom also. And you can actually just Google classroom labels, and you can buy these or get these at the educational store to label all the things in your classroom. It's just kind of a good idea. Most of the time you'll see these in preschool classrooms, but you can continue that in upper grades too. Maybe not look exactly like this, but you can make those kind of labels maybe just with the picture or the paper, or the name. Okay, so we'll go back to tools here, and now we'll look at some tools for behavior. So visual tools for behavior, typically what happens with students is they have a communication breakdown, and then that equals in behavior problems. And a lot of times we just, say, no, don't do that, or we're talking to them auditorily, and it just makes it worse. It's important that you give the students a visual representation of what they should be doing. So you could have on one side of a card, say, excuse me, and then on the other side of the card, it would say no hitting. So they were hitting, and so it's kind of like a replacement behavior card. Here's what you should do when people get too close to you. You shouldn't hit them. You should just say, excuse me, you're getting too close. A lot of times students have a perfection problem, and what they do is they want things to be totally perfect, and then when it's not perfect, they will have a full-fledged meltdown. So this is a card that you'll be able to download on the Make and Take area that gives the level of anxiety, where you would teach the child to say like how anxious are you, or where are you at on this level. And each one of these little numbers are represented in a statement here, so you can teach the child how to gauge their stress level. A lot of times students tend to want to do things that are not on your agenda possibly, and they just want to do that all day long. And so a lot of times we have to kind of bargain with them. And so this is a token economy system basically, and what you have here is a statement that says I am working for, and then my favorite thing to do. And as they're working, you would give them a token for each thing that they completed, and then once they completed all the tasks that were not favorable, they would get to do the favored task. Teaching self-regulation is kind of like that same thing about replacement behavior. When a child does something, they need to know that there's a time and a place to do that. So like if they're hitting, then the more appropriate thing to do is say, well, if you feel like you need to hit or punch something, you could hit a punching bag, but you don't hit people, basically. So ideally you want to make them not hit, but if they're feeling like they need that sensory feedback because they're really frustrated, then you could just point them into the direction where it would be appropriate, A lot of times kids talk about the same thing over and over and over again. So you can make a visual that says, stop. You can't talk about dinosaurs. You can talk about that at 2 o'clock, right before the bus comes, or whatever. If they're throwing things, you can show them that they can throw things, but it more so like things like throwing blocks in a bucket. You could throw, like that's appropriate. So this is a visual for managing high interest. It teaches them the appropriate time to do that thing that they like to do. And we do have this in the make and take area. So let's look at the make and takes for behavior. So for replacement behavior, I mean, you can verbalize all you want, but ideally what you want to have is just a picture representation of what you're telling them. And eventually you would just point and not say anything. So if you wanted to print out this printable, you would just click the picture. And so this is just a student screaming, and then it says no screaming, instead talk quietly. Okay, so you could just print that out. Each of these, you just click on the picture. If you use BoardMaker, there is a download for the BoardMaker file if you wanted to change these pictures to the student's actual face or to a student that student might know. Sometimes when you customize your visuals to meet that child's specific needs, they respond better to the visuals. This is an example of the I'm working for our token economy system. So when you click on that, Printable does generate I'm working for, and then spots to put the tokens, and then here's some working for icons choices, but you can actually make your own according to what that child's favorite thing to do is. I don't have an iPad here. I probably should update that because I'm sure all kids want to be on the iPad, or if they have the opportunity to do that. Here's the managing high interest topics, and so this one, when you print it out, fold it in half right here along the dotted line, and then you just laminate it, and so it becomes a card where you flip it over. One says stop, I can talk about this later. The other says at what time the child can talk about it, and there's a little spot here for the digital clock and the analog clock. So it's just a visual to redirect students to what they should be focusing on at the time. These are expectation cards, so when you have students that can't transition well, a lot of teachers will use these expectation cards and just kind of like show them. So here's feeling green and feeling yellow. This was taken from a national presenter named Susan Stokes. She does a lot of presentations on autism. And this says just feeling green looks like sitting quietly, doing work, listening. What should I do? Stay at my desk, keep working and listening. Feeling yellow looks like laughing a lot, acting silly, getting out of my chair. So this is another one of those visuals where you would fold it in half, laminate it, and you would have it, it would be like a flip card. Same thing with walk quietly. So walk quietly on one side with the picture, and the opposite side, the steps of what walking quietly looks like. And the same thing with mad. What are the steps you would do if you were mad? Managing perfectionism, that's this one here, and if you click on it, I think it's still there. It's not there. I'm going to have to update that. Sorry, guys. I got that resource from this autism program here, so they might have pulled it off, or actually, it's called the Incredible 5-Point Scale, so it's actually on the tap icon and not the picture of it. But if you keep scrolling down, it tells you how to implement the scale. I'll have to fix that link for you guys. Sorry about that. I thought it was here. And I'll get you this scale. This one is the circle time checklist. It's really typically made for early intervention or early childhood or kindergarten. And it's basically a visual manipulative to help students get ready for circle time. And so these little icons on the side here would be laminated and cut out and velcroed to this, so that the student would be moving their icons and checking off the things as they did them to get ready to listen for circle time. So it looks like this once it's made, and sometimes people will put it on like a lanyard for the child to wear around their neck when it's time for circle time, so that they can be working on, you know, the checklist rather than looking all over and not doing what they should be doing to get ready for circle time. Okay, so those are all behavioral manipulatives for visual manipulatives. So let's go back to the tools icon and let's look at schedules, visual schedules. So creating visual schedules, there's a lot of different ways to do this. It helps with representing activities in what order they're going to happen. It helps to organize and predict activities and teaches a flexibility on how to adapt to change, because sometimes kids have trouble transitioning, and it helps shift attention from one activity to another. It teaches of the passing of time, and it also helps with self-regulation, and it increases independent functioning. So when you're designing a visual schedule, there's a few things you need to consider. One is the visual representation system, like what is it going to look like, the size, how you're going to set it up, and how many choices the child can be exposed to at one time, the length of the schedule, where are you going to hang it or put it, or where is it going to be in the space, how do you indicate all done. A lot of kids want to know, when am I going to be all done with this activity? I really don't want to do it. It's important that you have incorporated in your visual schedule an icon for change. Like for instance, if the child typically goes to speech therapy that day and maybe the speech therapist is out that day, how are you going to represent that change within the schedule? And then is it going to be a clock schedule, or is it going to be an activity-based schedule? So I'm going to show you some examples of that. So when you're looking at representation system, you can have like real objects, miniature objects, what they call true base icons or TOBIs, photographs, real drawings, line drawings, or you can have just the written word. If the child reads, you can just write down the schedule. When you're looking at visual representation systems, you have like line drawings, you have signs, this is sign language icons, and then you have the real picture possibly paired with the line drawing. Also, the size of the visual schedule, it can be anything from a little tiny icon to a huge 3x3 icon, depending on what the child's visual preference is. So these are just some examples of just visual schedules, some in folders, some hanging on the wall, some built into a dry erase calendar. You want to have something in your room set up so that you can say, first we do this, then you get computer. It can either be left to right, top to bottom, or it can be a combination of left to right and top to bottom. You want to stay consistent with the student. When you start creating a schedule, you want to kind of have it have the same kind of flow throughout and not get too crazy with the way it's set up. It's important that the student have choices within their schedule, especially if you're working with a child who's really has some interesting behaviors and they're not really wanting to follow your flow. They kind of have their own idea of what they think school should be. So it's important for them to take part in developing their schedule so that they can have choices of what they can do during the day. A lot of times if you're working with a really challenging student, you might want to allow them in the beginning of the day to put their schedule together to help choose, okay, I got to do spelling, so when am I going to do that? First, second, third. You kind of have to learn to be a little bit flexible with these students. I think we have to learn to pick our battles. You don't want to be arguing about something that you could possibly never win that argument. So just make sure that you think about that and how important is it for them to do it in the order that you're telling them to do it in, or can they just get it done? The length of the schedule, you have to also consider like the cognitive ability and the motor ability. When you make a schedule, you don't want to make it too many things that they have to scan through or look through on one page if you feel their cognitive level is really low. You want to do it step by step, maybe one activity and then the task analysis for that. The location of the schedule is really important. I know people that make visual schedules and the student never walks up to the schedule to review it or to look at it or even to use it. So it's really important that you teach that in the classroom for the student when transitioning to check their schedule, and when things are completed they can put it in the finished folder or the finished pocket or whatever. So this is more so a motor. It's a motor activity. So you go there, you check the schedule, you remove things from the schedule. You can even use those icons to transition from one activity to the next. So you might want it to be portable or you might want it to be stationary. Checking the schedule and working towards independence. Eventually at the end of the year, if you're implementing a schedule correctly, that child by the end of the year should be able to manipulate that schedule and work towards independence. if you're consistent with the use of it, if you make sure that that's a part of the day, like it has to come from your routine in the classroom, so it can't just be done just whenever someone's there to watch or observe your classroom. It has to be done every single day. You can also make a check your schedule icon and not just always say to Johnny, go check your schedule, go check your schedule. You could also make an icon that says, and you can hand it to the child and say, check your schedule. And so they would that would transition them back to the schedule to check it. You always want to have an icon that that signifies all done, so that the student can be rest assured that, he did that. It was on his schedule. He did it. He's finished with it. That will settle some nerves about things that students really don't like to do when they can put it in the all done pocket. These are just some examples of how to indicate change. You can use the lightning bolt. You can use the universal symbol for no. When using visuals, you should really never take away that image from a child. That's the same thing as putting duct tape over their mouth. You wanted them to be able to tell you things, and you can still say, no, we're not doing that right now, or that's not going to be available, or whatever. Students need to learn to deal with the word no. I know I had students that really freaked out when you told them no, but you have to work through that. You can't just say, oh, we're not going to ever do that again because he's going to flip out. They have to learn to cope with being told no. These are two examples of the schedule using just pictures and then using a clock method where you would mark down the time of when they had to do what. So different ways of creating the schedule. It could be on a dry erase board. It can be an object schedule. You can have like a 3-ring binder or a clipboard. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It just has to be visual in nature, so that the child can actually look at it to check it and it be there for them always. So it doesn't have to cost $1 million. So this is that object schedule I was talking about earlier. So let's look at some make and takes for schedules. So here's a couple of examples. One is a schedule that was created with objects and pictures, and these are miniature objects, so I wouldn't use this with a little kid who puts things in their mouth because of course they could choke. These are just little erasers inside a weekly pill container, and this is one of those pill containers that's kind of large. You can get some pretty big pill containers. They make great object-based schedule containers, and so if you click on this, it'll open up a PDF of how to make this. Mini erasers, and then just the pill container, and then these are the icons that we used. These are the objects that we used to make that schedule. So if you had a student maybe that was, I don't know, maybe they had vision issues, you might want their schedule to be tactile instead of just visual. So this is just an idea. It might not be appropriate for all kids. This is an example of a morning schedule with a task analysis built into it. And so basically what you're looking at here is a fan deck, and the fan deck is made out of toilet paper rolls. So you would just collect a bunch of toilet paper rolls, wrap them with these little images, and then inside you would have a little pull-out that would have the task analysis in there. So if you wanted to recreate that, if you click on the picture, this is the TP2 visual schedule, and these are the instructions for how to put it together. What you need to do to make the task analysis pull-out tabs. And then these are the printables. So these are the little pieces that you would print out and wrap around the toilet paper roll. And then these are your pull-out tab names. So basically everything you need to reproduce that, along with the task analysis little card that goes in. So for art, you would have get the paper, get the markers, wait for teacher, listen to directions. For PE, you would have make a circle, stretch, march, jumping jacks. And so this isn't just an example. I do have this in a Word document if you wanted to change what these task analysis say, or if you wanted to make your own, just email me and I could send you the Microsoft Word document that we created this in. This is the PDF file, so you can't edit this one. Go back, you can see again the picture of that created. At the bottom here is created with a crystal light can, and this is the now and later schedule. And the difference between this one is that it's made with a round container, and it has like a laminated peekaboo window over it, so that you would turn this card right here on top of the can, and it would show different schedule items, and then it'll show what you have to do for that schedule. So it's like now it's like now this is happening, later this will happen, but notice how we don't see the task analysis for that until we turn the can. So this is with the paper that goes underneath the paper on top, and so you see each little item on the morning schedule has a task analysis underneath it. And I think we have this in editable format, but I think it's a BoardMaker file. And then the last thing on our schedule thing is just a PDF of the universal no symbol. So if you're using visuals and you don't have this universal no printed out, we suggest printing these out on transparency paper so that you can see through this little window, and so they can still see what's behind it, but they see that it's not available, right? So like if you're using it for snack time, or if you're using it for your schedule where you're not going to have, maybe you won't have OT today, or you might not have PT today or speech, then you want to actually leave that thing on their schedule and say, no, we're not going to have that, but we're going to do this instead. So teaching them, no is a really important skill, or really important for them to be able to tolerate being told no, or a change in the schedule. Okay, so those were all schedules right here. Last area we're going to look at is class activities, visuals for class activities. So when you're trying to get a student to go through the steps of a class activity, sometimes it helps for you to have that in picture format. First you do this, then you do this, then you do this. So step-by-step instructions on how to complete a task can really help a student with that task. This is an example of a termination card, and my little slide shows advancing. So this gives the child time to process. It's kind of the same thing as using a timer. So you would say, okay, it's time to journal. When it's almost done, you would move the picture, sorry about that, move the picture to almost, and then when it was finished, you would hit stop. So that's the termination card. These are break cards. These kind of help the child say, look, I need a break right now. I can't do this anymore. And then this is an example of a wait card where they would have 3 little X's, and that would mean that's how long they have to wait. You can also do wait with a visual timer like that, and you can buy those. These are emergency cards. These are things for like tornado drill, fire drill. It helps them deal with the change in their schedule. It kind of walks them through what happens whenever that fire drill happens. This is just the helping hand. It initiates communication, and it's just a printout that has a hand that says help me, and the child would just use it like hold it up. Okay, let's look at the make and takes for, so the make and takes for class activities. Again, I have circle time checklist right here and the expectation cards. We also put the link for BoardMaker Share here because BoardMaker Share has a lot of free activities you can download if you're using BoardMaker. If you're using Unique Learning, if you look into their core materials area in that, and you also can look in the area of, let me show that really quick because they have a lot of awesome free resources just whenever you log on using your Unique account. If you have Unique. If you don't have Unique. I know I talked to a lot of people who have Unique that never knew that these other extra things existed. So when you're on Unique Learning, if you go to extras right here, before you go to Unique itself, there's all these really great free things for classroom engineering, communication and behavior, gross motor, fine motor, and then fun stuff. So if you're using Unique Learning and you're really needing more visuals just for like your classroom routine or whatever, organizing or engineering your classroom, they give you all these awesome visuals. So check that out whenever you get a chance. And then also if you're using Unique Learning, if you go into their core materials, awesome, because at every grade band, they have daily schedules here. And they have what they call the personal binder, where they have the monthly calendar, my goals, grooming check, weather report. There's all kind of really awesome functional life skill activities in the core materials. But also, again, in where it says My Account on Unique, under Extras, you can find gobs and gobs of really awesome visuals to engineer your classroom. All right, so let me go back to this here, and I'm going to click on More Visuals. If you don't have the opportunity to have unique learning in your district, under More Visuals on our Visual Support Strategies, we have a binder that we made, and you can click on and see the pictures in the binder. There's the now and later icons, and if you click on the picture, then it takes you to the PDF printable of that. So here's just the now and later. So like if you're limited at your district and you don't have a lot of resources, just email us and tell us what you're looking for, and we probably have that already made somewhere. We've done visual trainings, make and takes for many years now, and we have a lot of stuff. So if you don't have the opportunity to own a license to Unique Learning, we can probably push you some free stuff. So this is just the student binder for like morning activity or whatever, and you can use this with any age group. So it's just like weather, what's the date, calendar, and we call it the student binder. So let's go over to resources here, and these are just some resources that we use to create this visual supports website. So Visual Strategies for Improving Communication is Linda Hodgson, and if you click that, it should take you to the book, or her website. She's a national presenter, and she does a lot of talks on visual support strategies. This book right here is a pretty good book to help you get started on how to engineer your classroom or engineer your area using visuals. Another good book, Use of Low-Tech Visual Support Strategies for People with Autism Spectrum Disorder, that's Susan Stokes. And she is the one that we kind of got most of this information from. So this is just the presentation she did many, many years ago, but all of these strategies still apply today. Okay. Another one is Carol Gray's Social Story book. I can't tell you how important social stories could be for a student that really struggles to get through the school day. Social stories really help a child prepare for what's expected of them, and a lot of times it will prevent meltdowns from happening. So this book actually has 150 social stories that teach everyday social skills, and it also comes with a CD. So there is a technique to writing social stories. So check this out. If you're writing any social stories in your classroom, just make sure that you're not, just check this out because it's a really good resource. All right, so under the web resources, I put a couple of things up here that are also free and just like more goodies for you to better grab from. This first one here is called Building Blocks, and it's a website out of San Antonio. And what I like about it is they have a lot of pictures up here, and these are task ideas. So it's kind of like task boxes that you build in your classroom for students to do independent work. And it's all visually based kinesthetic activities. So if you just click on the picture, then it kind of shows you, like if you're teaching a child how to fold a shirt, this is a visual on, how to do that. If you're teaching, this is like a rub activity where the child would do rub art. This one is word match, and it's just a bunch of the same words with a different font. So it's like categorizing, and this is matching words with images. So there's just a bunch of ideas on this website for like kinesthetic, tactile, visual activities for a child. This is one on facial expression. And it's just, notice how they're just made out of like this trash box and some cardstock and maybe a couple pictures that they printed out, Like you don't have to spend $1 million on these kinds of materials. You can use trash, actually. All right, so that's Building Blocks, and there's a bunch of other task boxes. If you click on any of these, you'll get to like even more. Task Ideas, page 3. So see how this little girl's working on writing a line using a marker. So just check that out whenever you get a chance, if you're like kind of starving for ideas. I'm going to close that out. This icon talk used to have this awesome foldable up there, but I just noticed that the website is no longer live. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try and put the PDF of this so you can still have it. Let's see if I did that already. No, see, the website's not going to the right place. I think they shut it down. But I'll try to put the Icon Talk foldable. It's called the Fold Up. It's just a printable to make it so that you guys can see what that looks like. Basically, it's a weight card. It's a visual schedule. It's a now and later icon thing, and it's all folds up into like a triangle, and then everything is in one little manipulative. Social story downloads. If you're writing social stories and you kind of need some inspiration, if you click on this here, this will take you to all these great social stories that are already written. So here's one on feeling frustrated. So if you click on it, it's actually going to download in Word, and you can just open it, read how it was written. My name is, and I am 4 years old. I go to preschool. Sometimes kids have a hard time with their projects or activities. So this is an example of a social story. If you've never seen one, this is what it kind of looks like and sounds like. But if you're kind of struggling and you need some inspiration, this website has lots of different ones. And it looks like there's videos too. So video social stories are also really good for some kids. They like to watch videos and watch other kids do things. So if you're struggling with a student and trying to get them to do something and they're just not getting it, it's kind of beneficial for you to videotape another child doing what you're asking the child to do and allow that child to watch the student do it over and over again. And I know a lot of districts that use this method, and they really have seen a lot of great progress with their students by using video social stories. Of course, Pinterest has lots of visual supports on their site. So this is a visual supports board that someone made. And I thought it had more. I was like, I thought it had more than this. It's just loading. So you see all these great visual support ideas on Pinterest. So full of stuff that's great for visuals. Okay, so I've finished. These are the links for Unique Learning Symbol Sticks and Boardmaker Online. These are both paid resources. And that's about it. So I'm going to open it up for questions. And if you don't have any questions, we'll be done.